Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a video on the Baropolis Podcast YouTube channel. Today, I've got Louis Roberts alongside me from the Tilehurst End, a Reading channel. So we had him on earlier on in the season. Reading beat us 1-0 at the Select Car Leasing Stadium, and it was a bit of a strange one. Both sides really were sort of just loitering around mid-table, and it seems as though things have twisted round. But first of all, Louis, how are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. So firstly, just to set the scene a little bit on where the table is now, Louis and I spoke earlier in the season about Reading possibly getting a points deduction from the EFL for breaking profit and sustainability rules, financial fair play sort of thing. And 6 points was deducted from the EFL. It's left Reading lying just outside of the bottom three, 3 points above Peterborough, although I do think Peterborough have a game in hand. So injuries to key players haven't really helped Reading at all. But on the whole, how would you describe this current Reading side, Louis?
Well, the side that went out on paper yesterday it's still a strong enough side to be much higher up than where they are, minus the fullbacks, obviously, which are two huge misses. I think the side is more than strong enough to easily avoid relegation and should be much higher, just despite the points deduction.
Yeah, it is. Looking at the squad, really, that Reading have. Of course, we saw last season Reading finish just outside the playoff places, and we're there or thereabouts all season, really. And the squad hasn't changed all too much, really, from last season. The only real big misses that aren't actually a part of Reading anymore, Michael Elisa, who's of course ripping up the Premier League now, and what's he called? Omar Richards?
Omar Richards, yeah.
Yeah, who's gone to Bayern Munich now. But in just over a week, the last week, which you probably won't really want to talk about, what we're going to have to touch on, Reading have blown a 2-goal lead in the last 5 minutes at home to Derby County, which on paper looked like a game that you really needed to go and win, but sort of just petered out towards the end. A daft goal got Derby back in it, and it sort of changed the game. Being beaten at non-league Kidderminster Harriers in the FA Cup third round, which I know you were at, so you can give us a good description of what that was like in that away end on Saturday. And then, of course, last night, which leads us perfectly into this week, really, 7-0 at home to Fulham. So, I mean, just wow. How would you describe the past week, Louis?
Terrible. Abysmal. Any word, really. Any negative could sum up this past week. But I was only at Derby and Kidderminster out of them 3 games, but Derby still, in terms of performance, I don't think we were good there either. I think we started the game the better, but then Derby controlled it, I felt, for big parts of that game. And then a Luke Southwood mistake got them back into it. And I think this side mentally is, once they go one behind or they concede, they capitulate, and they don't have the right mentality to approach a game or to see out a win. So that's inevitable. Kidderminster, well, Reading fans will know it was similar to a couple of years ago under Jaap Stam, also in the FA Cup third round, where we drew 0-0 at Stevenage. There was a very similar toxic atmosphere, but that's probably, in terms of the result, wasn't the worst thing. It was the performance. We've been almost dominated by Kidderminster. They kept the ball better. They did almost everything better than us. Other than Puskas' goal, I couldn't tell you a chance we had in that game. There was, maybe you could argue, Kamara early on was through 1-on-1, but didn't manage to put it past the keeper. But other than that, didn't really have anything. Second half had literally no attacks. Couple of shots early in the second half. That was it. Kidderminster deserved the win, and the atmosphere turned toxic afterwards, and it can't be blamed. But there was a few bits which are inexcusable, such as going onto the pitch, shouting at Panovic and the young players, and then attacking Tom Holmes's family members. Stuff like that shouldn't be had at football ground non-stop.
Yeah, it really shouldn't be at all. Really, it's inexcusable, isn't it? Even in the current circumstances, losing games and things aren't going for you, stuff like that's just inexcusable.
But then going on to Fulham, weren't at this one, and quite glad. Before the game, didn't feel confident, and I did feel we were going to get smashed. But I didn't think it'd be like that, because that was just embarrassing. It's dreadful. And it's the fact the worst thing is Panovic, last two games, all he needs to do is come out, and I would have liked an apology for both games. He hasn't said that, and he's looked for an excuse. And whilst he has been in a difficult situation, to lose 7-0 at home in this league, it's not acceptable in any way, shape or form. And to lose to Kidderminster, no disrespect, but we shouldn't be losing that game.
Yeah. So just there, you just touched there on the manager, Veljko Paunovic. Do you think that he's entirely to blame for the recent performances and the recent results?
I mean, his job as a manager is he's meant to get results out of the team. He's meant to help this team get, performances, and the performances haven't been there, and haven't been there for a while. It's almost, I think it's 2 wins in 13. And at the end of last season, we struggled as well. And that's probably what cost us playoffs in the end. But I think he isn't entirely to blame, because of course the players of the pitch have still got to produce, and they haven't for quite a while now either. But I feel he has to take a large responsibility of it. Some falls at the owner's feet as well. The whole club behind the scenes is a mess, really. Not the key one for me. We need to bring in a director of football and more football people who understand the club, understand football, instead of people that almost are doing things to benefit their own back pocket. But I think his time's up. I think his post-match interviews, I think, especially after Kidderminster hearing it was dreadful. He almost looked for any excuse. The team hasn't played in 3 weeks, all of this. Aravunya's injury changed the game, and he used the same excuse last night with Scott Dan when the game was 0-0 and we were 5 minutes into the game. But anyway, that is still no excuse to lose 7-0 at home. It's not, and I feel he needs to come out and apologise, as do a lot of senior players.
Yeah.
Because we've only had Dejan Tetek, an 18-year-old kid playing out of position, or he could be 19, come out and apologise after Fulham. And Halilovic, who's injured, and Yaku Mate recently spoke out saying we need to back players on the pitch, but we need to hear more from the senior figures at that place.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it, really? You look at things there. Mate hasn't played all season, but he's been the spokesman for the playing staff, which isn't really ideal, especially with a club captain like Liam Moore there, who, as you say, hasn't came out and apologised or really showed any sort of leadership to stand up and take these results on the chin. But going back to earlier on in the season, Reading were in sort of a similar situation than what they are now, really, with a lot of injuries. And they went into that game, the home game against Middlesbrough in September, and they beat us. And I think that day Middlesbrough played pretty poorly, if I'm honest. Didn't really create any chances at all. And the only real chance that we did create was a header from our goalkeeper in stoppage time, which wasn't great. But albeit there was a different man in charge that day for Middlesbrough. But what did you make of Middlesbrough that day, Louis, if you remember much from the game?
Thinking back to it, I remember it was a poor game. I thought both teams didn't really create much. I did feel we were the better of the two. John Swift, I think in the first half should have went through one-on-one, should have scored. But other than that, I don't really remember that we created much. And on the balance, you maybe say we did deserve the win, but I thought Borough were poor. But early on, Isaiah Jones was causing Tetek loads of problems at fullback, and he's one player that I know is going to cause problems. So
yeah, so I'm just remembering that game, that a game of not many chances at all. I think Reading's chance that they did eventually score from was probably one of maybe three chances in the game. I remember in that Swift chance where he should have scored. Now you've said it, and Lumley's header, which was only really a half chance, to be fair. So yeah, I think it's been quite a regular theme of Reading Middlesbrough games over the years to just be sort of tight games, hardly any chances in the game, and really it's only a one goal swing that swings the result. And now with a different man in charge at Middlesbrough, Chris Wilder, many players, and the team really has improved quite significantly since that performance at Reading. 5 wins out the last 6 out of 7 if you class the FA Cup as well. But is there anyone in this Borough team that you'll be looking out for? Of course, you've mentioned Isaiah Jones there, and I suppose he is probably the man that you've got to mention now, considering he won Player of the Month for December.
Yeah, Isaiah Jones is the main one. I think he plays in that wing back role, or he has done recently. Up against what will most likely be Ethan Bristow at fullback. I think Bristow could be in for a really tough afternoon. I think he's a very, very good player. He's quick, and he seems to have added an end product as well, which is quite concerning. I know up top, signed Balogun today, so he'll most likely be on the bench. Aaron Connolly as well, both two good strikers. Whilst unproven at this level, Connolly's played in the Premier League, and Balogun, I think he's played a handful of games, but has ripped it up in the under-23s. But yeah, I think we're in for a really tough afternoon.
Yeah, it's one of them things when you look at the game and you think it's pretty much a banker on who the winner is going to be, but this just doesn't happen in the Championship, unfortunately. You can have sides that are on really good runs of form against sides that are on a poor run of form, and the side that is supposedly just not meant to win goes away from home and wins the game and sort of just upsets the odds. But yeah, I'm hoping that the bookies' favourite comes out on top this weekend. But now for Reading, who should Borough be fearful of, really? One name that we always talk about on this podcast is Andy Carroll. Of course, being ex-Newcastle, he's caused us problems up and down the years. When he was at West Ham, he came at the Riverside, and of course, we all know his aerial abilities, and planted a header in the corner at the Riverside. But yeah, I've seen last night as well, despite the result, he scored 2 absolute worldies that were disallowed for offside. But yeah, is Andy Carroll one to watch?
Yeah, no, out of that team, same team that played, well, we won't have Scott Dann playing, but I think the only player you've really got to be fearful of at this moment in time is Andy Carroll, because John Swift seems to have gone off the boil, especially in the last couple of months. We've not seen the same player. Whether it's due to interest in him from Premier League clubs, I don't know, but we haven't seen the same player we saw at the start of the season. So I feel Andy Carroll, if we get it into his chest, play off him, he's going to be our focal point. He's the main man. And to be fair, he's probably the only player you have to worry about, really. I, I, I just not confident at all. Based on that performance, Andy Carroll's probably the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly looks like he's the main focal point for Reading at this current time. And when things aren't necessarily going all too right, it is pretty much just hit Carroll and try and bring others into play, really, which I can imagine Reading going away from home as well will try and do that and try and sort of give it to Carroll and let him hold it up and bring others into play and get Reading up the pitch, really. Try and win fouls high up the pitch and try and just kill the game by bringing Carroll into play quite often. So now finally, it's prediction time. So give us your head and your heart prediction for Saturday. Of course, anything can happen. We are filming this on Wednesday evening. Reading, there is mention of the managerial situation at Reading. Could the manager be in charge on Saturday, or could he be sacked? Who knows? But your head and your heart prediction, Louis.
I mean, both are saying Middlesbrough win, without a doubt. Head probably 3-4-0. But heart will go with a 1-0 win for Borough.
1-0 win.
Yeah, I don't think defensively we look at shambles, and especially yesterday it was dreadful. To have no Scott Dann as well, most likely for the game, it's going to be a big loss, because it will most likely mean Josh Laurent fills in at centre half. We have Tetek right back, Bristow left with Holmes alongside Josh Laurent, but I can't see us coming away with anything. And it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a real struggle.
It is a patched up Reading side, isn't it, at this current time of the season? Players that don't usually play in certain positions are having to fulfill roles that they haven't really played all too much, as you mentioned there. Tetek, I think he made his debut against Borough and he was playing right back and he's a midfielder. Laurent played at centre half for a few times this season for you with defensive injuries. And of course, I saw Halilovic went off against Kidderminster, who obviously scored the goal against Middlesbrough earlier in the season. So, yeah, it certainly looks like a patched up Reading side. And I think Middlesbrough will be looking at this game thinking we have to try and go all out for 3 points.
Yeah, no, I can't see anything other than the Middlesbrough win. Just the way we played on Saturday and on Tuesday was poor, diabolical in a way. I think the only players to come out with credit somewhat Andy Carroll, Tetek, and Mamadi Kamara, who might get a start. But I think the Reading side, despite the injuries, there's no excuse for the way they've played recently. And ultimately, the blame falls at Pano's feet, and he hasn't helped himself. And I think with him in charge, we will lose the game. I think he's been very poor over the course of the season. Really, he's lived off 2 runs in a way at the start of last season, where it propelled us to top of the league, clear by 7 or 8 points, and a run this season which included the win over Borough, wins over Fulham, Peterborough, Cardiff. I think that's saving his job at the minute, and I think the club's in a real mess. Missing a lot of people that understand the club, understand football even. The owners have got the wrong people in the club, and it's just difficult. I think people that are advising the owners are just looking to get their friends jobs. It's a real struggle, and the side on the pitch aren't producing either. So it will be I'm 99% sure it'll be a Borough win.
Yeah, it looks like at this current time the writing may be on the wall for Paunovic, but you never know if he's in charge on Saturday. It would be typical Middlesbrough to give Reading all 3 points. But yes, that is the opposition preview for this Saturday, Reading at home. So thank you, Louis, for coming on and filming this with me, giving us the insight. And to everyone viewing this, like, subscribe, comment, rate. And yeah, thanks for tuning into the Boropolis Podcast YouTube channel.